All right, welcome to our webinar. I'm Carla Ritz. I'm the Executive Director for First Five of Lake County. And I am honored to be here with all of you, with our speaker, and so many people from so many different areas across the state. It's a great day to be together. The webinar will be recorded and it will be posted on the First Five Lake YouTube channel no later than Monday. And a link to that shared folder where you can find all of the handouts for this training will be posted in the chat in just a moment, and it will also be included on the YouTube link. So First Five Lake County is very proud to host today's webinar. At First Five, our vision is that one day the success of Lake County and all of California is going to be measured by the well-being of our youngest children. And our mission is to build the early childhood systems and supports that are needed to ensure that our youngest children have everything they need to be healthy and safe and happy and ready to succeed in life and in school. Our webinar today is a step in that direction, and we are grateful to the partnership that we have with Lake County Child Welfare Services and Chabot Las Positas Community College District to be able to fund this training. They make it possible, and we are grateful to them. Today we are joined by foster and adoptive parents, social workers, service providers from all around Lake County, as well as colleagues from Shasta, Butte, Del Norte, Stanislaus, Humboldt, Modoc, and Placer counties. And I might have missed someone, so make sure you put your where you're joining us from in the chat if you haven't already. Allison Davis-Maxon is a nationally recognized expert in the fields of child welfare, children's mental health, specializing in attachment, developmental trauma, and permanency in adoption. And she is the executive director of the National Center on Adoption and Permanency. And she was the foster care consultant for the Paramount Pictures movie Instant Family. Allison was honored in 2017 with the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute's Angels in Adoption Award. And she's the co-author of 7 core issues in adoption and permanency. For more than 25 years, she has dedicated her clinical work as a licensed marriage and family therapist to expert programs and practices in children's mental health, attachment family systems, adoption and permanency, and developmental trauma. And she provides training, program and curriculum development, public speaking, and consultation services on a wide range of topics. And she frequently presents at national, state, and local mental health and child welfare conferences. In 2020, Allison co-founded a nonprofit organization with writer-director Sean Anders. It's called Foster Strong. Foster Strong is led by former foster youth whose mission is to empower current and former foster youth to reclaim their story and rebrand foster care to include their narratives, their voices, and their perspectives. And we are honored to have her here with us today and to learn from her. Allison, I'll turn it over to you.
Yay, thanks Carla, thank you. And thanks First Five, and thanks for all of our child welfare folks and all of our foster parents and kid parents and adoptive parents. I'm thrilled to be here. Those of you that were here last time for part 1, you just made my weekend. It was just wonderful to be with you all, to connect with you all, and I'm just super excited to be back. So thanks for inviting me just back into your world and your life, and we're gonna hopefully pick up right where we left off and talk about this amazing thing called attachment. And those of you last time, and I'm looking at a lot of you right now before I pull up the PowerPoint, because today we're doing a lot around the tools and what to do with kids who have complex trauma, attachment disruptions, and we're going to do kind of a deep dive into that. But can you guys show me the difference with your hands between love, this wonderful thing called love, and attachment? Show me. Angel, thank you, love it. Carla's there, yes. Who can show me? You guys remember? Yes, Adele, I love it. Like love is great. I love love. You love love. Attachment? Oh my goodness, like as far as our hands can reach. So I'm going to pick up right where I left off, because I tried to, in part 1, lay a nice foundation where we talked about the purpose of attachment and the tasks in attachment. We're going to really connect it to child development and brain development in a deeper way today, and then talk about tools for strengthening attachment. And all of those tools begin with all of us, begin with the adults, begin with you and I. So as I'm speaking today, I really want you to also be thinking about and listening for your attachment style and pattern. Whether we're a professional or a parent, we are actively on our own attachment dance floor, and our own pattern is always activated, whether we're in awareness of it or not. So we're going to be talking about all of that. I lovingly call this this webinar "Desperately Seeking Attachment," and I do that for a really specific reason. It's not because of the old movie. Those of you that are my age remember that old movie, "Desperately Seeking Attachment" with Madonna, right? But desperately seeking attachment, very specifically because children who've suffered complex trauma through attachment, relational trauma through the individuals, the parents and caregivers they were attached to, and or disrupted attachments, which is what happens in foster care when children move and move and move, all of these disrupted attachments, learn to fear attachment. Not intentionally, it's I don't want more pain. So the challenge, especially with our parents on the front lines, which is why we, I could bow to our parents in the trenches every day, that they're doing one of the most complex things on the planet with some of the most complex children on the planet. Because, and I want to frame it like this, because what the child needs most to heal, deep, meaningful, secure attachment, is most often the very thing they fear the most. And again, not a cognitive, they're not saying it like this, but it is what we call the attachment dilemma. And if our parents and caregivers don't know enough about this thing called attachment, again, different than love, they may not know how to lead the dance of attachment, which is often primarily nonverbal. So we're going to break much of that down today and end with, I'm going to be showing you a video today, with the 10 things your child needs every day to strengthen attachment. Because one of the things we find is that sometimes us professional folks, social workers, therapists, etc., we aren't giving it to our parents and caregivers with enough specificity, really specifically breaking it down and unpacking it. So sometimes we can talk really generally about attachment, and then they go home and go, you come to my house and you show me how to do all that. You break all that down. So the tools, the 10 things, was actually created specifically for that. And it's actually a tool you can purchase and put in your pocket. It's actually why it was created in the way that it was. So if you bear with me for a sec, hope I've reconnected us. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint. Hopefully everything is working nicely. You never know with technology, so that's always important. We left off last time in part 1, we were talking about adverse childhood experiences. And I do want to refer you all to the handouts, because you were given some, I think, really terrific handouts. And I'm a handout nut. I love handouts. I love tools. I love all of us to have tools, because we never know kind of what we need when. And having, I tend to over prepare and have lots of tools because I want all of us, and especially our parents who are in the trenches, to have lots of tools. I'm going to refer you just as a refresher around ACEs, and ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. There's an article I wrote called The Lingering Effects of Childhood Trauma, because many of us adults have childhood trauma from neglect, maladaptive attachment experiences. For instance, if our mother was an alcoholic or clinically depressed, or our father wasn't accessible to us, or was in prison, or just wasn't there in the home. Like, we may have maladaptive attachment experiences and lingering effects of childhood trauma that we're unaware of. And most often, those trauma triggers can manifest on our attachment dance floor as we're parenting children. And we're going to kind of go into why that kind of is, because of where attachment and trauma lives within the structures of our brain and sensory systems. So I'm going to pick up and talk about right now. This morning section is going to be really on helping us understand these patterns of attachment. So when we talk about a pattern or style of attachment, what do we mean, and how do these develop, and where do these come from? The father of attachment, Sir John Bowlby, who we spoke about last time, who developed his theory of attachment. And one of my favorite books, can I bring it over? The book by Robert Caron called Becoming Attached. Those of you that want to really do a deeper dive to really understand, which I encourage especially all of us professionals, to really have a very deep understanding of this thing called attachment and the patterns and both the art and the science of attachment. Again, it's Becoming Attached by Robert Caron. John Bowlby worked with Dr. Mary Ainsworth and Dr. Mary Main, who wanted to understand the patterns and from whence they come, and how early can we see these patterns of attaching. And if we can kind of think about it like this, when any of us are born into the world as a new baby, there's not a pattern of attaching yet. We're all in just what's called a state of disorganization. We don't have an active pattern. That pattern gets developed over hundreds of thousands of experiences between parent and child, what we call serve and return interactions. And there are 4 distinct patterns. These patterns, which Mary Ainsworth discovered through the development of the strange situation, which is basically how we can discover what these patterns are like, are identifiable by the 12th month of life, which is amazing because the child can't speak yet, but we can already see one of 4 patterns that the child has learned. That attachment, in essence, these skills of attachment are learned. So we all have to learn how to move through the world and get our needs met through human connectedness. That none of us knows how to get our needs met through human connectedness without learning these skills and competencies, many of which are emotionally based. So we're going to connect, especially emotional development, to these attachment patterns. So through this strange situation, and I'll just give you a kind of what that strange situation looks like, because when we talk about an attachment pattern, we're always talking about the parent and the child. We're never just talking about the child. The child standing alone doesn't have a pattern. We're always assessing the pattern between caregiver and child. So in the strange situation, what happens is we ask the primary caregiver, if it's mother or father, we ask the primary caregiver to come into a room with the child. Think about a 12-month-old or a 2-year-old with the child coming into a strange room with a stranger in the room. When that parent and child sit down on the floor and they start playing and there's a stranger there, that what we see the child, because the caregiver is there, if it's a secure attachment pattern, the child relaxes quickly if the parents relax and they can just play. What we then tell the parent to do, and this is kind of the essence of this strange situation, we tell the parent to, after a few minutes, get up and leave the room, leaving the child with the stranger. What we will see the child do quickly is leave what we call homeostasis, which is that relaxed play state. And that child will go into an escalated state of hyperarousal. Remember, we spoke last time about homeostasis. So when that child begins to escalate, as they notice their mom is gone, they start to cry and get upset. Think about physiological development. Their heart rates increase, their respiratory rates increase. They're now distressed or dysregulated. When we ask the parent to re-enter the room, What we see quickly when the parent comes and scoops up the child, it's okay, mommy's here, let's come back and play on the floor. The child in a secure pattern that's been in that pattern, let's say for a year, will quickly come back down to what we call baseline or homeostasis. So they bounce back emotionally really quickly because you can see what the parent's been doing for the first 12 months of life. And I want you all to think back to the two tasks in attachment. Do you remember the two tasks the parent has? They've been moving towards the child and reducing distress, towards the child, reducing distress over and over and over again. So that child has internalized regulation capacity. They can return back to homeostasis and return back to a play state as long as their attachment caregiver is available. Does that make sense? So that's the strange situation. In the maladaptive patterns, that reunion behavior, when the parent comes back in the room, is very different. And it tells us what's been happening in the life between the parent and the child. So when Dr. Mary Main came on board, one of the things that she wanted to do, and I use this frequently as well, to assess the adult attachment pattern, our attachment pattern. How do we assess adults? Because many of us adults can get very tricky around attachment because we can learn how to avoid emotion or how to not kind of speak to some of our pain or work around. So Dr. Mary Main developed a tool called the Adult Attachment Interview, which helps us assess the adult attachment patterns. For me, it's been one of the more helpful tools to be using to assess adult attachment, and I use it all the time because one of the things that we know is that what the child's pattern will be is what the adult pattern is, what the parent's pattern is. It's what they're learning in this dance of attachment. And that bottom piece here, which you all can see on the slide, which says RH to RH, which stands for right hemispheric to right hemispheric. And when we talk about the brain in a second, that will make more sense. It's basically a limbic bond. It's from my limbic system to the child's limbic system, which is really what the child is internalizing from me. So just to give you a little bit of kind of the science, what we kind of glean from research, that out of these patterns, and there's really kind of 4 basic patterns, we can identify them, yes, by the 12th month of life. Each pattern has a distinct and different behavioral repertoire, which we're going to look at, as well as an internal working model, a belief system, how I come to think and feel about myself, what I feel about Allison. Is she good? Is she valuable? Is she lovable? Does she deserve to have her needs met? So I have an internal working model connected to each of these patterns. The disorganized attachment pattern, which is all the way to the far end of the continuum, in the general population is about less than 3%. So a very kind of rare pattern for someone to stay in a disorganized pattern. But in children who have maladaptive or pathogenic trauma reactive care, it's up to 80% of our children and our infants have a disorganized pattern, again, from maladaptive care. The good news is that these patterns are malleable. So it's why helping our parents and caregivers know as much as they can about attachment, not just the child, but their own attachment pattern and history, is really invaluable. So a deeper look at these patterns, and you guys will also see the continuum is behind me, because I really want us to be kind of anchored into understanding these patterns and then how behaviors manifest from these patterns. When the parent's meeting most of the needs of the child, and I want us to kind of differentiate between needs and wants. Needs, I have these needs that when I have a need, I escalate. I move out of homeostasis. I'm distressed. I'm going to cry. I'm going to scream. I'm going to be agitated. I'm going to be dysregulated. My mind state becomes disorganized. That in this serve and return, I need my needs to be met, and then I can move into homeostasis and regulation again. Remember the 2 tasks. In an anxious attachment pattern, the parent or caregiver is meeting some needs, but not enough needs for that child to be securely attached. Which, by the way, in the general population, secure attachment is about 55 to 60% of the general population. So that's really the good news. Moving in this direction, we're moving more towards more pathogenic care for the child. So think neglect, relational abuse or trauma, multiple attachment disruptions, that children specifically who fall into child welfare are not going to be securely attached. We're either one, disrupting their secure attachment, or they didn't have one to begin with. They may have had an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment pattern. An avoidant attachment pattern is where the parent is meeting really minimal needs. And again, think of all of these on a continuum. Minimal needs is often high neglect, chronic neglect. And then in a disorganized pattern, there really can be pathogenic trauma reactive care, often coupled with intense abuse, a lot of trauma. I had one case where the infant was burned with cigarettes and wasn't fed, and just tremendous pain that the infant is absorbing. So this would be, they're unable to develop an organized pattern from serve and return because needs aren't met. So when they're screaming and hungry, they may not be fed and soothed and rocked and held. So long-term pathogenic care leaves the child in high states of suffering and disorganization. By age 5, and if we grow up the patterns, and I want us to first think about it, if you were at a playground and you were just observing all the kids on the playground, that children who've had access to a caregiver who allowed them to securely attach, we then maximize all areas of development for that child. So from their physiological development, their social development, their emotional development, they've been deeply rooted in a family system or caregiving system where their primary attachment and developmental needs are met, which is fabulous. So then you'd see on the playground, about 60% of the kids, they're playful, they're social, they're resourceful. If somebody takes their ball, they're going to say, give me back my ball, or they're going to run to the teacher and say, she took my ball. They run to an adult because they have basic trust that's developed, and they're used to having their needs met. So they seek out grown-ups to meet their needs. Moving down this way, the behavioral repertoire that you would see from a child who's had 5 years of hit or miss parenting. Sometimes needs got met, sometimes they didn't get met, and the child stayed too much in heightened distress or dysregulation, internalizing a lot of angst, anxiety, distress, worry, which can be easily triggered. So when you look on the playground at 5, you will see these children carry more stress in their internal system. They worry more, they may sound more demanding, more blamey, more clingy, more easily dysregulated. So if someone takes the ball from them, you might see them, go into a high meltdown and scream and yell or fall to the ground or just feel really very distressed because they carry too much distress. And again, this is on a continuum. So think they can be a little more towards secure attachment or more towards the more maladaptive side of the continuum. In an avoidant pattern, and by the way, these are many of our kids that land in child welfare, where minimal attachment and developmental needs may have been met either through neglect or 8 different placements, because we keep moving and moving and moving, each time disrupting attachment. Children don't move into deep, meaningful attachment relationships. That takes permanency. So what we see is more isolative behaviors, more detached behaviors, more defiance, more power struggling because needs have gone unmet. And you have children that don't regulate really well, and they don't have good social emotional skills, all of that serve and return. On the far end of the continuum, these are certainly more rare. But children who have high dissociative responses, they may freeze. They may have very bizarre, random, even kind of pathological behaviors. They may have more primitive animalistic behaviors. One of my favorite books that goes into this, by one of my brain crushes, is this book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog by Dr. Bruce Perry, who is a neuroscientist who actually specializes in child trauma, that really kind of speaks to especially children who have more chronic and intense trauma. And he puts especially really complex neurological understanding of children who have experienced this trauma with a very healing lens. So highly recommend that book. Actually, and speaking about Dr. Perry, it's actually what can make healing for some of our children so complex. So as you were just hearing me kind of speak to the patterns, I want you to kind of think about where the experiences from the first few years of life, year and embedded within the limbic structures of the brain. See this blue structure? Attachment experiences, our earliest attachment experiences, are embedded and encoded within the limbic structures of our brain, not our thinking executive brain. So thinking about where attachment experiences live is also where trauma lives. It's actually why I'm not a big advocate for our children and our grown-ups who have trauma so deeply embedded within the limbic structures of their brain, of talk therapy. Talk therapy that doesn't hit the sensory system doesn't activate the limbic structures. So you can kind of talk me to death, talk, because my executive functioning is not really what needs to heal. That attachment trauma and relational trauma is stored in our sensory system. So from what I smell to what I hear to what my body feels, our sensory system is really embedded and encoded within our limbic structures. So we have to think about healing very different. In fact, I always say that as a therapist, specializing in family systems, attachment-based healing, that the client is always, for me, the attachment caregiving system, never the child, because I have very little ability to heal a child. It's actually the caregiver, the parent, that's on that child's attachment dance floor that actually has the opportunity to change the limbic structures of the child. That's the amazing, great news. This is going to be a little bit more depressing before we get a little better here. So what happens to children when attachment is disrupted? And this is what I was referring to earlier when I talked about what children need the most to heal. For our children connected to child welfare and relational or developmental trauma is often what they fear the most, because they've lost so many meaningful connections, from siblings to former parents and foster parents, and they've had so many disruptions in their attachment caregiving system. They may oppose attaching. And think about, how we diagnose and or misdiagnose many of our children. Oppositional defiant behaviors, or even the disorder, it does drive me a bit bananas, because it's really an attachment impairment. Opposing attaching. What are our children who are diagnosed with oppositional and defiant disorder really struggling with the most? And these are most typically attachment impairments from a lifetime or a childhood, from attachment disruptions and or developmental trauma, where they've experienced a lot of relational trauma through attachment. The child then can develop an inner narrative, which they do. It isn't just the body that's absorbing the trauma, it's their mind state. So they may come to the conclusion that I'm bad, I'm worthless, I'm dumb, I'm damaged, I'm broken. If I have these beliefs about myself, that I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm bad, Again, this is the internal working model of an attachment pattern that is suboptimal. One of the maladaptive patterns here, that my behaviors come from this internal working model. If I know in my bones that I'm bad or worthless or damaged, I will act that way. I can't not act that way. I'm stuck in a belief system from what I've learned. So to help heal that child, we need to be understanding what we call the attachment dilemma. That the fear and the shame and the feelings of rejection and abandonment with every disruption have put the shark on my attachment dance floor, that I may oppose and even push away attachment. You're not my real mother, or I hate you, or send me back to my old home, or I just want to go back to the group home, or, a lot of fear and shame connected to this thing called attachment, and then their own belief system about themselves. So many of our children, and Carla brought this up last time, which I appreciated, those of you that watched the first part of this webinar. We talked some about internalizing behaviors versus externalizing behaviors. It's really kind of the complexity of children with high trauma. It's why I'm so passionate about helping to ensure our parents and our caregivers have the kinds of customized support they need, which is, again, not specific individual therapy for a child, because that healing element is going to be the parent or that family system that really is committing to the needs of that child. And children who have more internalized behavior may not be externalizing what their thoughts and feelings are, may not know how to put words to what it is that they're feeling, may be cutting themselves, maybe doing self-harming, may end up with eating disorders and high-risk behaviors. Those children, and in my estimation, it's always the children that are slightly easier to work with, have the externalizing behaviors, because at least you can see and they're externalizing what their challenges are. Read them a little more easily versus our children who have a lot more internalized behaviors. So I'm not going to spend a good deal of time on this, but I will let you all know that I'll make sure the PowerPoint slides get to Carla so she can put it in the Google Docs, because I don't want you guys to have to write down and take notes on these pieces. But in my estimation, I do feel we still have a long way to go to more accurately assessing and diagnosing our children of high trauma. Many of them get misdiagnosed as ADHD, as oppositional defiant, as we don't clearly have a diagnostic category, unfortunately, for complex developmental trauma where many of our kids would fit. So if we're not really accurately assessing and diagnosing what the challenge is, and how all of this trauma and all of this relational trauma, and attachment disruptions, how all of this impacted all aspects of the child's development. How do we then develop appropriate, effective treatment modalities for our children? And I still see that we have a long way to go, because even becoming trauma informed doesn't really get to the root of and isn't necessarily developmentally sensitive, because even a diagnosis of PTSD, which was scaled for adults, not developmentally sensitive, it doesn't really help us understand when the child was 1 year old, 2 years old, 3 years old, and all of these steps of development, how every aspect, and these are critical areas of development, from their physiological development, their sensory system, their social development, emotional development, cognitive development, how all of these areas were being impacted as we were moving them multiple times, or as they were being in a situation where their needs were being neglected. That we see that our kids were highly impacted by neglect and attachment disruptions, and that all of this impact impacts all of those areas of child development. 50% of our children had significant, quote, disturbances in this fancy term called affect regulation. And we're going to speak to that when we go to the tools, because it's one of the main things where parents and the adult caregivers can help children relearn regulation. Just because they're 5 or 8 or 10 and they haven't learned how to regulate doesn't mean they can't. It just means we have to take, as the parents and caregivers, a more brain-based developmental approach in our intervening with them. So it's some of them, when we talk about the tools, how do we help them master affect regulation, self-regulation, which will strengthen their ability to attend, to manage their impulses, to concentrate, have a more positive self-image, minimize aggression, because anger is often coming out because they have all of this unresolved trauma. So they can get stuck in a cycle of anger and power-seeking behaviors, power struggling all day, because they've often felt they've had no power, zero control over these big decisions that have affected their life and their identity in really significant ways. So those of you that want to learn more about developmental trauma specifically, and again, one of my brain crushes, I'm not going to go into great details, but it's this man here, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, and his book called The Body Keeps the Score, Brain, Mind, and Body in the Healing of Trauma. And he really makes a strong case for the understanding of developmental trauma with our children. To boil this down, so especially for our parents and kind of caregivers, if you're looking at this brain, I want you to kind of think about that we are feeling beings. It's our limbic structures, the first three to 4 years of life that are developing first, that these parts of the brain are developing their neuronal pathways, and they grow up to 90% of their growth through the first 4 years of life. So in essence, we're feeling beings before we're thinking beings. That our feeling brain, here our limbic structures, develops first, and then our cognition, our executive functioning, sits on top of that. Well, what if all of what's been input into my limbic structures has been exposure to chaos or violence or disruptions or lots of distress? So then my thinking brain struggles with even learning how to regulate and make sense of the 8 different homes that I've had, or the things that my eyes and my sensory system has been exposed to. I've been exposed to so much pain and suffering, I don't even know how to find pleasure and calmness. I don't know how to find homeostasis. And that's a skill that I should have been learning and mastering, specifically year 2. Remember the kind of the terrible 2s? It's all about regulation. By the way, I love the 2s. I want to actually, I think we need to rename that. That it's all about learning how to manage our own distress and triggers, and learning to come back into homeostasis after a stressful event. Many of our kids miss those milestones. They completely miss those regulatory experiences that would have taught them regulation from the inside out. So then what happens when our children move into new families with our foster parents and our adoptive parents or our kin parents with little ability to regulate? Say they don't sleep well, they don't feed well, they don't respond well to, hey, it's time to do homework. Almost any little demand can feel incredibly overwhelming to the child. So, how do we heal? How do children heal from relational trauma? So, we're going to do a paradigm shift here. And I want us to be thinking, because this is really the structure of all of our tools. This is kind of a major shift for many of us parents, because many of us grew up in homes where we were parented a certain way, where we attached first and then we got disciplined. Attachment always precedes discipline, because remember, year 1, year 2, we're not doing much disciplining, we're doing a lot of attaching. So attachment is supposed to precede discipline. this can actually make trying to discipline our children we're not attached to, and I mean secure attachment, very challenging. And many of our children have deficits in these areas. Think physiological development. That bucket is red for a reason. By the way, you guys have a handout on the red bucket. Social development, emotional development, cognitive development, and conscience development. And I like us to break these down because development is actually much more complex. I do feel like we don't spend near enough time talking about specifically child development, connecting it to these 5 areas and really brain development. So I don't go anywhere without talking about the brain. And for a child that's entering the world with these 5 areas of development empty, they haven't had experiences yet, how do these buckets get filled or these needs get met is through attachment, is through you, is through my grown-up. You actually have to come towards me and give me the experiences I need to pro-socialize me and to help each of these areas get their needs met. Now that's when it's about addition. In fact, that's why you see the 1 + 2 = 3, that it's about addition, that it's about what we're adding through attachment experiences that help the child develop pro-social development. So in normative development, what you see there is that the child's on the bottom of the step as an infant. Then when they're 3 and then when they're 8, that we're meeting all of these needs on each step of development. The child has all 5 of those areas. So any missed stages, any relational trauma, any disruptions when children are treading water in the deep end of the pool, when we're moving and moving and moving them, they're not strengthening all of these areas of development. They're missing critical steps. So we can see a 5-year-old child who's chronologically 5, he's been on the planet for 5 years. That does not mean he's been in a secure attachment relationship for 5 years, and that all 5 of those areas of development have had their needs met through attachment. So what we can see is a 5-year-old chronologically can act much more like a 2-year-old with high dysregulation and a lot of anger, and they're biting and kicking their sister and having all of this dysregulation because they've missed a lot of the pro-socializing experiences that children who've had access to secure attachment and permanency have had. So, shifting the paradigm, how do we fill and add to these buckets? So we're going to be moving away from parental interventions that are based on loss and punishment. And I want to kind of speak to this for a second because for thousands of years, we've been using basically loss and punishment through attachment to try to change children's behavior. And I'll give you an example. So when children, here's the parent and the child, when we're securely attached and my child does something that I don't like, a mistake, let's say they kick their sister, I'm going to rupture the attachment relationship and send my child away from me. You go to your room right now. We don't kick our sister in this house. So I'm using a secure attachment relationship, what we call a rupture, using emotional distance, go away from me. Mommy's not happy with you. I'm angry with you. You kicked your sister, go to your room. That's using a system of loss and punishment, which, by the way, works when you're securely attached, when you have a secure attachment. If you don't have a secure attachment and you try that, especially with one of our kids in child welfare, you're going to say, we don't do that in this home. You go to your room. You're trying to rupture and use emotional distance with a secure attachment relationship that doesn't exist. So what we most see how our kids respond is, you go to your room. I don't need to go to my room. You call my social worker, take me back. You're not my real mother. You're not. They respond very differently. And I want to really just kind of emphasize that really we've been using this way of parenting for a long, long time. It's one of, I think, the more difficult things for parents to come out of just more kind of traditional ways of parenting, because most of us were parented like this, using punishment. I'm going to take things away from you all day long every time you make a mistake. And by the way, our kids are making 50 times more mistakes than your average kid because their needs haven't been met. So most of their developmental areas have deficits. Think kind of Swiss cheese development. So they have more needs. They actually need more added in experientially through good pro-socializing. So the shift, the paradigm shift we want to make as parents or caregivers is to be focused away from what the child's losing. So think about using a mantra of subtraction, what I'm taking away when my child makes a mistake versus what I'm adding when my child makes a mistake. So we're going to be, see the arrows going in, we're going to be utilizing this mantra of addition. So it's going to be, what sensory rich experiences do I need to be adding redos and time ins to one, kind of teach regulation first, because by the way, I have to get that red bucket first regulated. Then I can add into the emotional development, the cognitive development, access executive functioning. I can have access to those other developmental areas. But if the child's dysregulated, loss and punishment isn't working at all. In fact, a lot of my talking to my child is backfiring and not working, and I may be getting more frustrated. So these principles of loss and punishment, to inflict more pain and harm, just if we think about punishment, which for our kids who already come from a life experience of traumatic losses, they already have fear embedded into attachment. They already have an internal working model that's often really negative. I know I'm stupid. I know I'm dumb. I know I'm worthless. They have a really negative internal working model. So this punishment way of intervening can backfire really quickly. Whereas discipline, I love to differentiate between discipline and punishment, because discipline means to actively add. It comes from the root of disciple. What am I adding into each of those 5 areas that actually changes and adds pro-socializing experiences, so my child now has certain skills. They can regulate better. They're more pro-socialized. They actually feel remorse. This breakdown, and just to give you kind of a guideline around what's the difference between just more traditional parenting, which is how most of us were raised, and more attachment-based, because the challenge many of our parents have is because the child is not in secure attachment with them, they actually have to do both at the same time. Develop a secure attachment, the serve and return with the child as they're pro-socializing and disciplining the child. Think about a child that's 5 or 8 or 15. Our parents have a very complex job. Remember this thing called attachment? Really complex job. It's often why I think they need many more customized support services, not just for the child, but for them. So this effective discipline, I'm actually going to speed through these next few because I'm going to make sure I make time for the video that really is going to be breaking down all of these, what I call the meta messages that a child needs through good discipline. That really good discipline is really needed because those buckets need to be filled. It's actually what helps us create a conscience, that we need children that have empathy, that feel sad when they've hurt someone, that can take responsibility for the pain that they cause or the arrows they've shot into somebody's heart. So we need to be doing practices and redos with our children, which can take a little bit more time for the parent in the beginning. But when those buckets get more full and the child's moving from an insecure pattern into a secure attachment pattern, which is my goal. My goal with my child is to create a secure attachment pattern with me and them. So when they go into distress, I'm moving towards that distress, moving them into homeostasis, and then we're working together to solve the problem. So this is never about permissive parenting. I always like to say that to parents. This is not about being permissive. In fact, our kids need more pro-socializing, deep and strengthened attachment. this intimate dance of attachment helps to de-shame the self, helps them to know that their needs are valuable. I'm here to meet your needs. And through these ruptures and reparations, the child learns to actually take responsibility for some of the infractions or the mistakes they've made, kicking their sister, that we're actually going to have them do a redo around that. Well, what can you do next time when your sister takes your toy, as opposed to kicking her? Because some of our kids go here really quickly and react on impulse before executive functioning, thinking skills can kick in. So there is a lot of good news, and you'll hear, especially in our tools, in the 10 things kids need every day from their primary attachment caregiver, that we're actually taking a brain-based approach. Because the good news for all of our parents and caregivers is that you can actually change the brain of your child. This wonderful thing called the human brain has neural plasticity, which makes it really malleable. The younger the child, the more malleable that brain is. And by the way, the human brain is really not done kind of developing until about 25, 26, which is excellent news. So those of you that are parenting our teens, even though it may feel more intense because they're more moody, they're more impulsive, they can think more abstractly, they're redigesting their trauma, they're seeking identity, wanting to know their story, which is hard when you have episodic history, when you've moved 8 times. So the challenges around our adults or our teenagers is pretty intensified. But this brain is really malleable. Much of what we do, especially connected to that parent-child dance, is very nonverbal. That children are learning in their limbic structure. Remember our limbic structure? This is our feeling brain. That children actually have to learn to feel through their sensory system. The body, the senses have to actually learn all of these complex feelings before they ever become a word. Think about how complex that is. I'm always kind of amazed about this. It's what can make, especially understanding trauma and understanding our own pain and then putting words to that pain, that we have to first understand how to experience these different feelings, and then we generate thoughts. It's actually what separates the humans from other mammals, is we put thoughts to our feelings, which can be a good thing, and sometimes it can be a not good thing. We can actually kind of obsess on certain old things that have happened over and over, and I know that's none of you guys, over and over again, and seeking and getting to this place of insight and awareness. Do I really know what I'm feeling? In fact, I usually encourage parents to not really ask those why questions to kids, like, why did you do that? And why did you do that? And why are you... Children often have them, which I know can be a challenge at times, because toxic stress can creep into our interior. How we discharge that toxic stress and manage our own emotions and then communicate those emotions becomes a big part of how we help our children learn about emotions and their own emotions, which are really much more complex because of all of the experiences they've had connected to trauma and losses and grief and disruptions and attachment and disconnections from their family system or siblings, etc. So without kind of further ado, I'm going to show you a video. It's going to be about 14 minutes or so. And what I'd have you guys and kind of challenge you to do is pull out this handout. If you've copied it, this should really kind of help. If you have a kid right now that you're parenting, let's say you're a foster parent or a kid parent or adoptive parent, take out the buckets and be listening for and thinking about your specific kiddo and some of their unique challenges. And I want you to be, as you're listening to these 10 things, Identify one or two. I mean, I'm going to walk you through with real specificity these 10 things, but I want you to be thinking about just one or two where you go, oh, I could really focus in on that one, because it's going to be much more about what we can do to empower us parents to be able to intervene each day to strengthen brain-based development from the bottom up. Remember, not top down, that's kind of talking our kids to death, which is executive functioning, which is often for our kids not where we need to start. We actually have to start with their emotional and developmental needs and think kind of limbic structures. So I will spend a few minutes at the tail end of this kind of doing a summary and then allowing you guys to ask some questions. So I'm gonna stop the share and then pull up the video so we can talk about tools. You guys ready for tools? Yes, we're so ready for tools.
I am your child. I am trying hard to get close to you and to learn how to be your child. I need 10 things from you every day to help us be a family. Number 1, I need you to listen to me. Really listen to me. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. If you listen closely, you will hear what I need from you. Every day, my behaviors give you clues to what I need. My behaviors are my way of communicating. They tell you every day what I need. My words tell you what I want, not what I need. I can't tell you with words what I need, but I'm always telling you with my behaviors and emotions. Tune into me. I get overwhelmed and overstimulated quickly. I need your help to calm down. I get upset and stressed easily. I need your help so I don't feel so alone with my overwhelming feelings. I need to feel connected to you. More than anything else in the world, I need to feel deeply connected to you. Use fewer words and more actions that connect me to you. Please listen to me with your heart, and you will hear what I really need from you every day. What I really need is you every day. Number 2, I need to know every day that I'm important. I need to know that I matter to you. I learn to value me by having you value me. Please tell me all the specific things that I do every day that please you. I need to hear those concrete things from you every day. Do you like how I brush my hair? Or how I made my bed? Or how I'm sitting at the table? Please see the positive in me, because I don't see it in myself yet. Do you like how I wrote my name or shared my toy? It helps me feel better about me when I know that I matter to you and that you see wonderful things in me. I learn to value me through your valuing of me. If I feel that I'm important to you, then I feel important. I need to hear each day all the things that are good and valuable about me. Number 3, I need to be touched every day. I need to learn that touch is good, safe, and loving. Hug me, cuddle me, hold my hand, rub my back. I'm a biological being with basic needs for touch, affection, and closeness. I desperately need to feel connected. I don't feel connected through your words, but I do feel connected through your touch. Please talk less and touch more. I have a hard time being separated from you. I don't make changes easily. Help me to reconnect to you after we've been separated by using touch. Keep me near you. I do best when I feel physically connected to someone I trust and love. Each and every day, I need a lot of touch and closeness from you. Number 4, I need to feel safe and secure every day. I need a structured routine and a predictable environment in order to feel calm on the inside. When our home is structured and organized, it helps me to understand the world and to see how things are connected. In order for me to learn how to think in an organized way, I need to live in an environment that is orderly and predictable. When my outside world is structured, it helps me stay calm on the inside. I learn better in an environment that is relaxed and organized. Help me to feel safe and secure every day by keeping my outside world structured and predictable. Number 5, I need to make choices every day. It helps me to think and to learn. I need to make choices so I can feel powerful in my daily life. I need to learn how to make good choices. And I need to practice with the little choices first. Like, do you want mommy to brush your teeth or do you want you to brush your teeth? Do you want to play Candyland or Yahtzee? Do you want to start your homework now or do you want a snack first? I need to learn how to think. And one of the best things you can do for me every day is to challenge my brain to learn how to think. Every time you give me choices, the wheels in my brain start turning. With each choice, I have to think and then make a decision. Each time I make a good choice, I feel smart. Each time I make a poor choice, I get an opportunity to learn about the consequences of a poor choice. I learn just as much from my mistakes as I do from the good choices I make. Give me little choices all day long to help me feel like I have some control in my world. By giving me little choices each day, you make me think and learn every day. Number 6, I need to feel that we belong together every day. I need to be claimed by you. I need to feel that you're mine and I'm yours. I need to feel that there's an invisible string that will always and forever connect our hearts. I need to know that when I tug on that heartstring because I'm sad or lonely or angry and hurt, you will be right there for me. It's very important that I don't feel alone with all these overwhelming thoughts and fears that I have. I will thrive and grow when I feel permanently connected. If I'm afraid that I may lose you, I will be very anxious and distressed, and my behaviors will tell you that I'm struggling. Show me every day in many ways that I belong with you. Put pictures of me on the wall and give me chores that help me to feel like a member of the family. Talk about our future together and make sure to point out all the ways that we belong together. Because of my history, I may try to push you away. I may have trouble letting you be close to me. Please don't take this personally. It's not about you. I need you to keep trying and learn to let you get close. But please remember, it may be scary for me, and it may take a long time for me to let you get really close. Please don't leave me with my own intense emotions. I don't know what to do with some of the overwhelming feelings that I have. I need your help. My most important and basic need is the need to feel connected. Help me feel close to you every day. Number 7, please play with me every day. When you play with me, it's like I'm taking a bath in pleasure. When we're laughing and playing together, you're teaching me that being close to someone is not only safe, it's fun. Each time you play with me, you're teaching me the dance of attachment and connection. Play is my language, and I'm learning every minute of our play together. I'm learning how to let others get close to me, and that closeness is safe, and it feels good. I need to have fun with you every day. Each and every time you play with me, you're strengthening my social skills as I'm learning the give and take of social interaction. You're strengthening my emotional skills as I learn to be patient because it's not my turn yet. You're also strengthening my cognitive skills as I learn how to travel through the issues that come up during play. Don't just watch me play, but play with me. We need to laugh together and be silly. So please make sure we have some fun and play together every day. Number 8. I need to know that it's okay to make mistakes every day. I'm young and small, and I have so much to learn. Please don't be mad at me because I make a lot of mistakes. Your anger at my mistakes makes me feel scared and stressed. I need to know that mistakes are okay. If you keep getting mad because of my mistakes, I will have to start hiding my mistakes or lying about them because I don't want you to be mad at me all the time. Please know that I'll be making a lot of mistakes every day. I need you to teach me about all the things I never learned before and help me figure out solutions to the problems I create. And I feel smart when I solve problems and learn from my mistakes. Have empathy for me while I'm struggling to learn life's lessons. It's not easy making mistakes every day. I need to know that you're on my side. Help me learn from the mistakes that I make every day. Number 9. Help me find my island of mastery every day. I was born with many seeds of potential. Help me to develop these seeds that I was born with. They have to be tended and watered and nourished in order for them to grow and blossom. These seeds of potential may be sports or singing or drawing or reading or drama or music or something we haven't figured out yet. I need to know that I'm really good at something, and I need your help to grow these seeds of potential. They won't blossom without your attention. I need to be able to say, I'm really good at something, so I can feel proud of myself and know that you're proud of me too. I need to do, create, and accomplish every day. Feed and nourish these seeds of potential in me every day so I can learn and believe that I have gifts to offer the world. Number 10. I need you to be my emotional tutor every day. Show me every day how to manage and express my feelings the right way. I learn how to manage and express my feelings mainly through imitation. I'm learning from you. I need you to show me the way. Teach me how to use my words to express my feelings. Teach me healthy outlets for my angry and distressed feelings. I'm watching and learning from you. You are the leader in this emotional dance. Let me know that it's okay to be sad or mad or even hurt sometimes. And show me all the right ways to express those emotions. I get overwhelmed with all the different feelings that I have. I don't know how to let them out. I need your emotional wisdom to help me understand me. I get confused about all the different feelings that I have, especially when I have big feelings and lots of them. I know I make mistakes in trying to express these feelings. Please be my teacher and help me learn better ways to express myself. I need you to be my emotional tutor and show me the way every day.
Wow, that was so nice to see again. You guys, I have not seen that in such a long time. I do want you all to know that those are all of our families. Those are adopted and kinship and foster families. And my hope is you could tell that. And I know all those families. So for me, it was this kind of beautiful moment where I got to see all my old families again. And they had such a wonderful time all participating in the creating of the 10 things your child needs every day. And my hope was that all of you saw what we're adding. I hear a little background, so maybe Carla can work on that for a sec. All of those 10 things. This is a pretty quick consolidation, but it really should feel like all of this was in the 10 things. That's so much about creating a strengthened attachment relationship with our children really comes from us and our ability to first kind of regulate and then attune. Emotional attunement with my child's needs is hard to do if I'm dysregulated. So really good self-care and attuning to my own needs. If I'm grieving or if I'm distressed, I really have to pay attention to my own internal needs. So we can never ignore our own feelings. Again, think kind of limbic structures. Attachment's about creating a limbic bond with our child. And the sensory system, I hope, is that as you could have listened to and were walked through kind of the rhythm and the visuals, that you really get a feel for that the child's taking their world in through their senses. And that's how they're taking you in, the attachment caregiver. So again, it's not just our words. They're reading and attuning with our emotion. How are we feeling about them? Can we work to replace our parental anger, which is often easy to find because many of us were raised with a lot of anger. I had to work hard on that initially. I started my career in residential for about 10 years, but I was raised with a lot of anger. My grandfather was an alcoholic and raised my mother with a lot of anger. So my mom used a lot of anger and yelling and screaming in her parenting. So one of the things I had to kind of unlearn and relearn is how to regulate better as I was moving into intervening with my kids, because I did not want to repeat some of those same patterns, which, by the way, are embedded and encoded within our limbic structure. So it's not just like, oh, I'll just do it differently. It's actually much more complex for us to unlearn and relearn and practice, which is why mistakes are really important. And we get to make mistakes too. It's kind of the beauty of, we certainly can make mistakes. We will make mistakes. I always tell parents to let their kids know you have permission to make 22 mistakes every day, and your mom gets to make 5 mistakes every day. That we're going to make mistakes. And if we make a mistake as a parent, to actually go back and do a redo. You know, mom blew it yesterday. I want you to make the same mistake, and I'm going to respond differently. And we can show our children that we're learning as well. And we can have grace and forgiveness of ourselves and go back and show them a different way. These kind of choices and redos allows for some emotional flexibility as the parallel process, meaning I on my parent path and am learning and growing and changing, and the child on their path can learn and grow and change. And then through this dance of attachment, we are learning and growing together. So it ends up being such an important mantra for all of us, this ability to make mistakes and understand and have insight about our feelings and regulations, and allow ourselves to have big feelings and put words to that so our kids can really see how it's done. That really children heal and change through attuned, attached relationships. So it really is within that context that real deep healing can occur. So first of all, I feel excited I got to through all my slides, which I don't always do. So I want to come off the PowerPoint for a few minutes because we have about 10 minutes left. And I'd love to hear from some or all of you guys, as many of you guys as we can, so I can answer any questions, and we can just speak and chat about what's happening with you and what you heard, and unpack any questions that you may have.
I really like the video, how it was told through the child's viewpoint. That really sticks with me a lot. I kind of remember that more because it kind of puts me emotionally with them on what they're thinking and how they're feeling. And I think it's more powerful to me to remember it that way.
Laura, do you know that that's exactly kind of why I did it the way you hear me do it, right? I wanted it to be kind of the voice of your child.
Yeah.
Because it's very different when we talk about kids and their needs, but if you think about your child right now today, in fact, I do want you guys to know this is a DVD tool and it's in Spanish. What?
Right.
It's in Spanish. It's very inexpensive. We actually made it for that reason, that very reason, because sometimes I'll have parents kind of take it home and listen to it over and over again, especially if we're struggling, if we're triggered, if we're angry, or if we're hurt, or we stop having empathy for our children's pain and suffering. It's just a really good reminder that their little brains and their little beings still so need from us. So Laura, you just made my day by saying that, because that's why it was.
Yeah.
I agree with Laura. I felt that all of the little examples that you gave after the I need statement from the child, it really took it deeper. And I think it was super powerful. I mean, there were a couple times I welled up and,
Are you a parent, Angel? Are you parenting right now?
I'm not. I'm actually a coach, and I work with a lot of providers in the 0 to 5 realm. And this is a big topic for us, especially right now during COVID. How that attachment can really make the difference for any of these kiddos that are going through so much, even if it's a teacher. So yeah, I will be using this video for sure.
Good. And that specificity that you're talking about, Angel, is sometimes, and I sometimes do feel this as I'm out there in the world, just that our parents aren't often given enough quote kind of specificity when we say, oh, strength and attachment. And we sometimes speak really globally, and it's not really broken down, connected also to child development and brain development. And this helps them to kind of see that these global 10 things, we can do them every day. In fact, I normally have parents we made little handouts to put on the refrigerator. So each day they're checking like, oh, I did that one today and I did that one today. Because sometimes we get in a pattern with our children where we go, wow, I haven't touched my kid or hugged my kid. And today, like that little checklist helps the parent change the pattern as well.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, sometimes the behaviors are what gets focused on so much, especially from providers when they're like, I don't know what to do. There's this behavior, and helping them take a step back and look at the whole child. And again, with this attachment piece and taking it a different looking through a different lens than the side of things. So thank you. I thought it was really powerful.
Well, and Angel, I don't know the piece I always speak about behaviors because I go a little bananas around behavior. Let's talk more about behavior. And I'm like, okay, can we stop talking about behavior and talk about the brain?
Right.
The brain and child development, which is why we break down those areas of development, because every single behavior comes from those areas of development and deficit, right? And maladaptive attachment patterns. So we do have to have a deepened understanding, or else we as professionals can get stuck with our parents, talk about behavior, hammer away at behavior, and
Yeah, and talking at the child instead of understanding that it's in the body, and it's so much bigger that you can talk at them, and it's why are they still doing it? But they're at a different space, at a different level, and I think that we skip over that what's really happening inside that child so often. Oh, you're 3 and you're talking to me, so you must understand. But where they're at developmentally and within where their brain is developing, it's such a big piece, and I don't think that it's focused on enough.
I'm with you. And that piece, Angel, that you're referring to around the internal working model, the belief system of the child. And we don't talk, I wasn't able to do kind of a deep dive around that, but that is a really important part of where many of those behaviors come from. Again, it's like a brain-based system that we have to be, more focused on. So I'd love to hear from any others. By the way, thanks, Angel, for that great feedback, and thanks, Laura, for that great feedback.
Whenever I hear the word behavior, it just makes me think back to what is the stress of the child at that moment. Because behavior is a result, I believe, behavior is a result of some stress, internal, external, some stress at that moment. That's the result. That's where the behavior is coming from. If you're an adult, if you're a child. So I always try to remember what's that stress?
Yeah.
What's my own stress? Why am I reacting the way I'm reacting when it doesn't call for that? I just take a deep breath, try again. But that's just my little piece.
I love it, Heather. And really, the way I say it is really similar. It's basically, if there's a behavior, there's a need. There's an unmet need. There's a need state, whether it's the kid's need or my need. And it's a way of that they're communicating. So let's be listening to ourselves, which I love that you're saying, Heather, like it isn't just the kids, like we have needs as well, and attuning with those and meeting those needs and regulating, is really important. So I love how you think about that.
Yes, this is Maria. I'm sorry. And I agree. I have the same situation because I have 6, well, 3 adopted, but I have 6. And sometimes one is scream, and it's because she is so frustrated. She had the memory that same situation happened in the past. She's scared that she may gonna hide something because then she's gonna be moved from my house. And I said, no, you're already my daughter. You adopted, and you are gonna stay here. We're gonna work together. And it's true the way that the other person describes what is going on in the brain at that moment, that she explodes that way to get the attention and to say, hey, I'm here. I love you. That's the way. One of my girls said, that's the way that I learned how to say, I love you. I'm here. I want a hug, but I don't want to give you a hug because I'm scared that you're going to say no or you're going to hurt me. And I said, no, just open your eyes and look the place where you are and look how things change. You are here. Wake up. You are here. This is a different place. And it's just like, oh, okay. So I've been seeing that a lot. And I went so deep on those videos. It's just like, oh my God, I have to apply this. I have to go on this. This is really good material. I mean, I love it.
Oh, good. And Maria, I think was that your name, Maria? Did I get that correct?
Yes, Maria Viruet.
Maria, because I love what you're saying. One of the things, and I didn't get too much, I wasn't able to go into it very much, but children, especially with chronic relational trauma, their trauma triggers are, when they're embedded and encoded within their sensory system, they're often implicitly embedded, meaning they often can't cognitively pull out those memories. So it can be a smell or a time of day or a certain scent or a taste, so the memory, once it resurfaces, then can trigger a flooding response. That flooding response for the child is often hormonal, adrenaline and cortisol, and I'm looking like, is that bad person here, or their fear distress system then floods their body. So having what you just described, Maria, to pull them into the present moment. It's okay, mommy's right here. Look at mommy's eyes. Mommy's gonna rock you and hold you, and you're with me right now. To pull them into the here and now, so you have the opportunity to take them from a dysregulated state of that flooding experience into a homeostatic here and now, because this happens a lot for our kids where the past doesn't stay in the past. Their past has been embedded and encoded within their sensory system, and fear embeds the quickest and the deepest in the limbic structures. So it's an important piece for those of us working with kids from high trauma, and adults, by the way, not just kids, of high trauma. Fear, so if you have, and here's an example of a dog that bites you when you're 2 years old, bad, and you go to the hospital and you need stitches and all this pain, you can have a phobic fear of dogs for the whole rest of your life, and you may not cognitively remember being bit by a dog, right? Because you're 2, but you may have this fear of, like, you hear a dog barking and your sensory system floods your body with the memory of that. So what our body never forgets, like we have, right, sensory memory that's embedded implicitly. It's what, when Maria's talking about, I think she said 6 children. So Maria, can we give you the Medal of Honor right now? 6 children, and think buckets. That's 30 buckets. That's 5 buckets per kid, 30 buckets. Maria, like, we're going to give you a medal right now, what you're doing, because it's very complex what Maria is doing right now. So I just honor and commend the work and the love that you're pouring into your kids.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a quick question about attachment. We serve families, and so periodically we'll see a foster child in 2 or 3 different settings because we're a 0 to 5 program. And what we're noticing is that sometimes these kids are in a Head Start center, and regardless of where they're placed, it's recommended that they stay at the same Head Start center or the same daycare provider. Are you finding that those secure attachments can be formed secondarily to the caregiver? I'm thinking back to ACEs and having the positive experiences outweigh.
You got it, Samantha. I think the important piece, so yes, you're spot on. So primary attachment caregiver, which we did in part 1. And then secondary attachment caregivers. I love that you guys are working to not change and interrupt those patterns. Because what we do know, whether it's primary or secondary, these attachment patterns, these relationships that are meaningful to the child, remember, it's sensory. It's that person's face, that person's voice, the way that person looks at me and touches me and holds me. They are not interchangeable. You can't go, well, we'll take these attachments and move the child to the new home and they'll all be intact. It doesn't. Every time we disrupt, we add grief and loss to the child's sensory system, and the child, especially the young child, feels loss and abandonment in a way that they don't cognitively understand. You left me. They don't have the cognitive structures or capacity to really understand the pain, the loss, the trauma. So love that you guys are really working hard to keep those meaningful connections intact for the child.
Looks like we are out of time. I know we have one question in the chat, which is, where can we get that great video? How do we access that?
Yeah. So let me close with kind of a couple resources, because I have 2 on my desk that I didn't share, and I want to make sure you guys have access. So when we're working with adults who we know have had some maladaptive attachment experiences, right, like high ACEs, one of my favorite books is this one. And it's called Attachment, 60 Trauma-Informed Assessment and Treatment Interventions Across the Lifespan. It's good stuff, by Christina Reese. And it's a workbook, so it's easily kind of applicable to your adult population folks. One of my other newer favorite ones is called 2468, This is How We Regulate, right? With 75 interventions that any of us can do with any child to help them learn regulation. So it's all about kind of serve and return. This one is about by Tracy Turner Bumberry, and it's an excellent one again. I give some credit there. And then the video that I showed you all is for purchase on the Kinship Center's website. I think it's $19.95 or something really inexpensive. And we've used it in support groups with parents, in trainings where we might take each of the 110 things and pull each one into the support group where everybody's talking about, let's talk about touch. Let's talk about how I receive touch, how we give touch, healthy touch, especially for children that have had physical abuse, sexual trauma, who are touch aversive. Like any one of these 10 things can be broken down and really unpacked and teased out, right? So Kinship Center's website, and they are a member of Seneca Family of Agency. So I think they were the ones that produced it. So it should still be available on that website, kinshipcenter.org. And it's called The 10 Things Your Child Needs Every Day. I'll hold that one up too. All right, and listen, just a big thank you to all of you. What fun this was. I'll be sad that I just can't talk to you more or give you a hug or thank you for the work and the love that you're giving to our kids and our families. You know, good vibes to you all and many blessings moving forward. Thanks for all the healing work that you're doing.
Great training.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you, Allison. We will be sending out an email after this with lots of links for you all, and of course a feedback survey that our funders really appreciate when you complete. It only takes a couple minutes. So I'm going to give a round of applause and a smile or a clapping of our time together. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful afternoon and a great weekend. I'll be in touch.
Bye, everybody. Carla, do you need anything else from me?